Shalom, and thank you for watching this video from HaDerekh Synagogue. I hope you are liking the content we are bringing you. If you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, that will greatly help us. And to further help bring great content to you from our teachers, if you could please consider to donate to HaDerekh Synagogue. The link is in the description box below. Thank you for watching.
Okay, a human being causes tumas mace once his or her body ceases physical manifestations of life, mainly breath. Tumas mace is uncleanness from a dead body. Mace is a dead body. Once the body ejects its last breath, the body dies and it immediately exudes av hatuma, which is actually it means the father of uncleanness is what av hatuma means. So it's basically like tier 1 is what it's trying to tell us. So anyone who touches the corpse contracts tumas mace. Since this is a most severe state of uncleanness, it is given the name av hatuma. All I had to do was just wait, and it was here. Rava, speaking in the name of Mar Zutra, the son of Rav Nachman, who further spoke in the name of Rav Nachman, his father, from Avodah Zarah 37b, said, anyone who touches a corpse or who touches someone while in contact with a corpse has tuma for 7 days. By saying, upon the living beings, which is nefashos, who were there, Bamidbar 19:18 indicates everyone can become an av hatuma. Further, Rava states that anyone who touches a contaminated person while he is not in direct contact with the corpse is simply tameh until evening. However, the sages dictate that a person is indeed unclean for the full 7 days, not just until evening. Yosa ben Yotzer rightly rules in favor of our Chachamim, did so to permit them doubtful tuma in the public domain. Yosa states that direct contact with the corpse affords tumas mace. Someone in contact with the av hatuma who is in contact with the corpse contracts tumas mace. Those who touch the person with av hatuma are simply tameh for 7 days. In like manner, whoever touches a body in the open field, killed by a sword, whether a victim of combat or a victim of murder, or a corpse, which basically means somebody who dies from some other reason besides those two reasons, is tameh for 7 days. Avodah Zarah 37b. And for those who are in the Daf Yomi, you get to hit that in a week. Maybe it's 2 weeks. An av hatuma can transmit tuma even to an infant. That comes from Nidah 44a. By use of nefesh, the mitzvah designates everyone with a soul, even an infant or a woman. Sprinkling with the water of the red heifer, which is the water of the red heifer is also known as mechatas, which is spring water in which the ashes are sprinkled into it and then mixed. This is required for cleansing. However, idolaters are exempt and are not subject to the rules of uncleanness. That comes from Nazir 61b. We know this, and I know it sounds unfair, but we know this because the pasuk states, shall be cut off from the midst of the congregation. Idolaters are not part of the congregation and are therefore excluded. When one is tameh from a dead body, a 7-day separation begins, much like the separation demanded when one cohabits with a nida. You know what nida is, right? Okay, that is a woman who's during her period. Cohabit, I don't need to explain that one. So, 7 days tuma is written for both commands. Just as one is banished from the camp of the Shekinah for tumas mace, so too one who cohabits with the nida is banished from the camp of the Shekinah for 7 days. Separation occurs from a dead body, or a sheretz is banished from one camp, the camp of the Shekinah. A zav, a man who emits a specific type of seminal emission, is banished from 2 camps, which is the camp of the Shekinah and the camp of the Levi. And a zava, which is the female version, same thing. A mitzora, a person who has contracted zorus or leprosy. Oh, please, always put quotes around leprosy. He's banished from all 3 camps, which basically means he is outside of Israel completely, or outside of Jerusalem completely. Pesachim 68a, for those who want to read up on that. But Midbar 1913 states, Benefesh ha'adam. It is not translated as of the soul of the man, but of a soul of the man. The redundant of a soul may be understood a corpse within a human being, Chulin 72a, which would be a dead fetus in a woman's uterus. And the verse states that anyone who touches the fetus is unclean. So it would seem logical that this is qualified under the pretense that one knows the fetus is dead. However, if one reaches into the womb to rotate a dead body from breech birth, the midwife is tumas mace for 7 days. Once the head crowns and presents, the mother too contracts tumas mace, but not until then. The midwife must submit to the 7-day purification of Av Hatuma before continuing her midwifery duties. Otherwise, she contaminates everybody that she touches. Discussion within the Babylonian Talmud ensued over the issues of Hatuma. While it's clear that a whole or complete corpse inflicts Av Hatuma upon anyone who touches it, what about body parts? Vayikra 11:39 uses the frame, and if there dies from an animal, indicating that limbs severed from an animal conveys tuma if it is a limb that cannot be regenerated. I don't know, I hope none of this conversation is really bothering anybody, but what the rabbis do is they parse all the words because words are important. So when they see something ambiguous or something unusual in the text or something that seems like it's a redundancy, they try to figure out why. They're just not satisfied with it's a redundancy, let's just move along. So, in other words, a portion of flesh that can heal and rebuild, like a small portion of muscle, fat, or skin that rebuilds as it heals, does not convey uncleanness. I remember back when I was living in Colorado, I had this big paper cutter, and I was cutting paper, whack with this thing, and it was like a 13 by 13 with this big blade on the end, and I'm cutting paper, and my finger went up in there and whacked off part of my finger, including part of my nail. So that little piece went flying off. What's weird was when I went to go pick it up, I was actually kind of surprised I didn't feel. Okay, but what's interesting is that would not convey tuma because it grew back. You can't tell that it ever was cut off. It feels numb right there, but that's it. So a small portion of muscle, fat, or skin that rebuilds as it heals does not convey uncleanness. Therefore, an actual limb that is a permanent loss or of complete loss of functionality conveys corpse uncleanness via a roof. That is from Chulin 128b. Bavli and Bechoros 44 further gives a Mishnah detailing the rules regarding extra limbs and the Kohen's ability or fitness to perform the service. Okay, in the discussion, if an extra limb, be it a toe or a finger, has a bone in it, he is considered unfit to participate in the service, even though amputation would bring him to the normal number of fingers and toes. Have you ever known anybody with 6 fingers or 6 toes? However, if the removed extra digit did not contain a bone, it can be surgically removed and he would be considered fit. This discussion digressed into the subject of Av Hatuma and its application to missing limbs from a living body. Rav Chanina in Bechoros 45 ruled that for a limb or a body part to convey tumas ochel, roof, it must contain 3 things: flesh, gidin, and bone. Gidin is nerves and arteries, veins, that kind of thing. If the 3 items exist above, that a body part contains flesh, nerves, and bone, at some point they should cease to be sources of Av Hatuma. For instance, the natural tendency for things to decompose and break down to their base components should render this material no longer tameh, but in fact tahor. The Brisa says flesh from a corpse that has crumbled is tahor. Nida 55a. Here we learn that bones or graves are sources of contaminations until they crumble to dust. When wet or dry, they convey tuma, but once they are dry and crumble, no more. This is one reason why our tradition says that we should not embalm, because that impedes that tendency. You will see coffins that are made of like pine that has not been treated, so that the pine rots away, and then it's all intended. Yes. Seeds, food, beverages can never attain the level of hatuma. The implication is that the capacity to convey tuma to utensils and people is limited to those mentioned in Pasuk 22. In other words, whatever utensil the contaminated person touches shall be unclean, or whatever touches the utensil shall be unclean until evening. Seeds can be planted in the ground and grow. They are not susceptible to tuma. The items are subject to the purification process mentioned in Pasuk 18. Since food, beverages, earthenware, kalim, utensils, are not mentioned in Pasuk 18, they cannot be purified of tumas mace. Therefore, they never acquire of hatuma, and they never contaminate people or utensils. You know, everybody kind of has a specialty, and I don't know how this dumped in my lap, but I have been studying this, and I really go into depth every time I do, and so this is like a 17-year process so far, and every time I do it, I add stuff and I subtract stuff, and so you're now the victim of that. So